Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Every Day's a Train Wreck. I'm your conductress, Marley Major, and I am really excited to have a terrific guest on. Her name is Michelle Bias, and she has written a fabulous book I want you all to go out and get. And if you listen to the podcast that I did with my publicist, Diane White, you will know this is going to be another one you will not want to miss because Michelle came to us from Diane. So welcome, Michelle, and most importantly, tell us a little bit about your bio before we dig into the book.
Of course, Marley, but thank you, first of all, for having me on. So I co-found a Storyslam that's here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm an intergenerational trauma expert. I do family constellations, and I'm a writer. I have a private practice. I have a master's in transpersonal psychology, and I just do all the things I love, really.
Okay. Well, you said about 6 things that I don't even know what the definition is. So, A, can you tell us I think you said transpersonal psychology or something,
Yeah,
or transpersonal trauma, or can you say it one more time and what the heck is that?
That's a nice word, transpersonal trauma. All inclusive.
It's kind of how I feel sometimes.
Psychology is really just like including the everything of everything.
Okay.
Like the all-in-one. It takes a broader view than standard psychology does, and it includes mind, body, and soul.
So instead of just a trash can full, it's like a dumpster full of all your shit. Okay. Now, what was at the beginning you said Storyslam?
So have you ever heard of the moth?
Of the what?
Of the moth?
Yes.
So here in Tulsa, we have a Storyslam event. It's really fashioned after the moth. Okay. We've been doing it for 11 years, me and the other co-founder, Brandon Hall. And we have open monthly events, and we get those winners from each month, and then they compete for Tulsa, Oklahoma's Best Storyteller of the Year. And it's just a really fabulous platform for people being able to get up, tell their stories, have a voice. We also have a board of coaches that will work with people on, crafting their stories. And it's a really great place to let go of the narratives that you're telling yourself about a certain story and kind of reconstruct it, recraft it to have a different narrative.
Okay, so for those of our listeners who don't know what the moth is, let's back up for us and explain that, because it sounds like it's kind of based on that, right?
Yeah, so the moth is NPR, and it is like if you've ever heard of Moth Radio Hour, and they're all over, they're international. And, it is a place for people to come and tell their stories. And so the moth is what originated the storytelling type community, and we've just kind of followed after it.
Okay. And so for the moth that's on NPR, how long are the stories? What kind of stories? Give a little bit of depth in terms of that.
Yeah. So I think on the moth, it used to be the moth, or still is Moth Radio Hour. So that would be an hour. Mm-hmm. Most people's stories on there are probably around 10 minutes. For us here, our storytellers get on stage and their stories are somewhere between 5 and 6 minutes.
Okay.
And so we kind of keep it there for, competition wise and time wise for getting in 10 storytellers a night.
Okay. And so what are the parameters of the stories? The stories have to be, other than,
they have to be true.
Okay.
They also have to be focused around whatever theme. So in February, our theme was online dating.
Okay.
In March, we repeat the same theme, which is confessions.
Okay.
So you have to keep it on theme. You have to keep it within time, which is that 5 to 6 minute mark. Yeah. And it has to be well told. And that's what the judges are judging you on.
Okay. And when you say, so then my creative non-rule following brain goes to, that seems like that has a lot of leeway in it. So I would be like, oh, okay, it has to be well told. So what's the definition of well told? Do I have to say it with my mouth? Could I use big cards? Could I act it out? Could I have other people
No. So it's just you and a stand-up microphone. You can't take the microphone off the stand.
Okay.
And you can't read off a paper or off your phone. So, it's, again, we kind of craft it around, say we were sitting around a fire and you're telling us a story. And so that's what we want to do. We want to be in conversation with you as you tell us your story.
Okay. So the conversation, there is no back and forth during the 5 to 6 minutes.
It's just,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Okay. So give me some of what you think were the best.
Oh my
The
goodness.
best ones. Or you can even, if that's like, because I'm putting you on the spot,
Yeah.
what about a story that, recently won?
Oh yeah. Let me think. There's so many stories, and I've heard over thousands of them, obviously, within an 11-year period. I have a story that I love that's about a guy jumping rope at I believe, Christian church camp. We have a woman who gets on stage a lot and tells stories around growing up in the 60s and what was allowed and what wasn't. And she has fabulous kind of risque stories. Gosh, I don't know. Again, there's so many stories because, not all the stories are like funny and humor.
Yeah, right.
A lot of them are really poignant, heartfelt. And again, putting me on the spot. I'm like, I don't even.
No, I get it. What do you think? So, like pulling back, then, what do you think makes a great story and storyteller?
So I think what makes a great story is that, and again, I'm going to say this, people sometimes will get up and tell a story that they've not even worked on, right? Sometimes those stories win because these people are really good at just telling a story. Other winners have to, work at crafting their story. And we have workshops that we hold that help people, bring their story and get it crafted from one of our coaches. And with that, it's a great opening line, right? And it's a great ending. And, the middle has this, whatever comes out of their mouth, because you can practice it one way and then you have other things.
Absolutely.
In as you're telling the story.
Story of my life. Yeah.
Right. And the middle has this moment where we realize they've had change. Something has shifted from where they started to where they're going to end.
Right.
That makes a good story. And also people who bring, a little humor, a little heartfeltness. It's well-rounded in that sense. Like you would want to hear their story again.
And I would imagine you would feel like you're in the story if it's a really good storyteller, like that you were there when the kid was jumping rope.
Right. And resonating, right? Because that's what your audience is really doing. They're resonating with you as you're telling that story. It makes them even think of a time when something like that happened to them. And,
So that's like that, oh, I can relate moment.
Yes.
And I would imagine the other thing too is that it would have to touch your emotion, it would have to tug at your heartstrings in some way.
Right. Especially if it's like a heartfelt story. And, now as we're saying this, the last person who won our Storyslam, which was in February, was about them meeting someone online and eventually robbing banks with them. So it was more of a funny, as they put it, a cautionary tale type thing for online dating. And
they really did rob banks with them.
True. Yes.
And did they do time?
They did.
Oh my. Okay. Well, now I'm very interested. Yeah. So how did it come about 11 years ago?
So 11 years ago, I went to a high school mini reunion at a pub here in Tulsa. And I met this woman who I'd gone to high school with, but never, we weren't friends. We didn't run in the same circles. We sat at the end of the table together and realized we had a lot in common. And we started meeting for lunch. And as we met for lunch, we decided that we wanted to do something for our community, something to give back, an event that we ourselves wanted to be able to attend. Mm-hmm. And we both had an interest in storytelling. And so we decided just to, start. And we started in a really tiny coffee shop. 10 people were there having coffee that day. So they had to listen to us tell 2 or 3 stories each. Nobody would get up and tell a story until right at the end. And we just stayed with it. We stayed consistent every month. And here we are. We're about to have our 11th annual Grand Slam, which means that's when we're picking Tulsa's best storyteller. It will be at Kane's Ballroom. And we will probably pack out 600 to 700 people in that.
Shut the front door.
Yeah.
And okay, so how do they hear about it? I mean, now it's probably a little bit different, but how did it go from 10 people or whatever it was in the very beginning to what it is now?
Facebook, social media, word of mouth. And again, I really think that the special ingredient in that was that she and I stayed consistent. Yeah. Whether we had 10 people showing up or a night when there was 30, and then we started growing. And as we grew, we had to change, venues a few times. And I don't know, something in the consistency of it and also in the non-attachment to it, where we didn't really ask it to be anything for us, like to pay our bills or, to be this thing. And I think in us just asking it or allowing it to be whatever it wanted, it had potential and the space to grow.
It's interesting. It's kind of like when you're desperate to date somebody versus you could care less. And all of a sudden, when you could care less, you're the most attractive thing on the planet. I think you made a reference to somebody who had told a story before. So people can get up and do it every month if they want, or how does that work?
So yes, like in the beginning, we were begging for 10 storytellers, right? And now we have like this little bag. You come up, you put your name in the hat, and we draw. And if your name is drawn, you have, you can get up and tell your story.
Wow. So you don't know ahead of time that you're doing your story?
No.
Wow. That's crazy. And then the other cool thing is, so you have to show up.
You do. And so they sign up the night of the event, like doors open 30 minutes ahead of time. Yeah. And that's when they can come and sign up. Yeah. We just can't promise them a spot.
Wow. And so there is no first come, first serve. It's just who gets pulled out of the hat.
Yes.
Very cool. And so what is the point of it now? I don't mean that in a bad way. Is it, so for you guys now, is it like it's your passion, you love it? Is it a stepping stone? Is it, part of a sales funnel now? What's driving you now to keep it up?
So one, just pure enjoyment, right? Mm-hmm. It is not the main job for either one of us.
Right.
In fact, we non-profited back in 2020.
Oh, cool.
And so, we do a lot of curated events. People hire us out for, like a big birthday or anniversary event for companies. And, we try to provide storytelling workshops for free for people. And, sometimes we go into schools, sometimes we go into different organizations and teach. So we're really just trying to keep the wonderful art of storytelling alive here in Tulsa. And we have the most amazing community. We really do. Like our storytelling community, it is just made up of all kinds of people, all the best people, and everybody who gets involved with it just has a love and a passion for storytelling.
It's so cool. And what mix every month do you think it's of people who have never been before versus people that go every month?
That's a great question. We were just talking about this the other day. But it's, we know when we're in those turnover phases, because from the mic, when I say, if this is your first story slam, raise your hand.
Cool.
And half the people's hands go up, you realize, wow, how is it that we keep filling this place? Because monthly events, will be somewhere between 100 and 200.
Yeah.
But it's just crazy, like the age demographics, how it switches in, switches out. But we just keep reaching people. And I think that is what's so beautiful about it.
And do people have to pay to go or no?
Yes. The monthly events are like $10.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. And then, and I would assume to do the story, you have to be there in person. Like there's nothing virtual about it.
Nothing. No.
Can you watch it virtually?
You cannot watch it virtually, but we do post like the runner-up and winner stories on Facebook and Instagram. And I will send you the bank robbing story.
I would love that. I'm all about a good robbing of anything. Yeah. Well, do they win prizes, or is it just like, guess what, you won?
So that if you're the winner, you win a spot in the Grand Slam to compete for Tulsa's Best Storyteller. And I think we give you $40.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay. So it's just a total labor of love. I love that. And so the Grand Slam, I'm assuming, is once a year?
It is once a year. This year it's on April 11th.
Oh, my daughter's birthday. That's very easy for me to remember.
And that's the name of our Story Slam, by the way.
Is it really? Well, you must have been channeling that, because everyone on my team says, can you please stop starting every video with, okay, so.
Yeah. That's a great opener for us, because not only do we always say that, but we're from the state of Oklahoma, so it fits perfectly.
I didn't even think of that. You know what? And you could just say, it's like, isn't Oklahoma the Sooner State?
It is.
So you can say, okay, so like you're cutting yourself off from saying the Sooner State. I'm going to tell my daughter that, because she gets very annoyed with me. So you mentioned that this isn't the only thing you do. And I know you're a writer. Is that what you are primarily doing? Because you wrote a terrific book, The String Theory. And if it's not, or if it is, where do you want to start?
I have a private practice where I work with people, couples, family, just in a coaching type manner, counseling. And, the basis of my work is intergenerational trauma work, because I believe that we come in to our families of origin and we start being imprinted and programmed with how we find our belonging, how we find our love. And it's those imprintings that then when we turn towards the world, that we start to attract people into our lives.
And your book is written in a really unique way. Like it sort of reminds me of how I think, which is like, blump, there's a blip. And then you turn the page and it's like, blip. And there's a sort of like, if you weren't paying attention, maybe you'd think they were unrelated, but the story is continuing through as you go. How did you come up with that way of writing?
So I don't know that I did. When I set out to start writing back towards the end of COVID lockdown, which was kind of a reach for me to do something different, a little more creative than, other things I was doing, I joined this writing group and I just started writing. And so I don't know that I set out to write a book. I keep saying that. And, each of those pages that you read, probably 10 pages attached to it, right? Like if you go back and you look at my notes. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of first iteration. Second iteration, it was a play. And I would have people in my writing group read different parts. And I really don't know the moment where I began writing these little vignettes, these postcard style images that you are correct. They kind of reflect the way that our memory floats to the top. Right. We turn towards the kitchen and we think, we walk out to our car and something else is coming through. And it's those memories that are floating to the top that you wouldn't think have that much impact on you. But when you think of them over and over, you've got to realize, or at least I did, that these are the memories that have a lot of impact for me.
Right. To me, it made me think of it's like the memories become like this tape and then become something that then needs an affirmation later to correct it, but only when you've had a minute to stop and say, wait a second, this doesn't, to critically think and be like, is this even what I want to be thinking or telling myself?
Right. I mean, I think what you're describing is what I describe as a pause.
Yeah.
Where I kind of stretch time out a little bit to figure out where I am.
Yeah.
I just worked with a client right before getting on this and we were talking about how her anxiety gets so triggered and comes, just in the weirdest of places. And, I said to her, how old are you in that moment? And she said, oh God, I didn't even think about that. I'm about 14.
Wow. Interesting.
Right. And so if we can stop time enough or pause time enough to say, wait, this is not where I am right now at this age in 2025. And when I'm in this moment, I feel like I'm about 14, then we can talk to that part of ourselves that's 14 and, nurture her or him and say, I got this. You don't have to drive the bus anymore. And of course, there's a lot more to that.
Right.
But, this place where, again, slowing down time just to kind of collect ourselves so that we respond rather than react to the moment that we're in.
And there's a lot. It's a very current topic that I'm sure it's not why you wrote the book, but it's a very current topic now about, mindfulness and about people getting off their phones and, taking a beat before you just immediately send the email that's like, which I would love to send in the old days. And, where you kind of it's like, wait a second, just take a beat. Mm-hmm. And so it just reminds me, it's very timely, but it's also like when you're saying pause and you're kind of reflecting on it, it's kind of why I think I don't know if you're familiar with the book, The Artist's Way, but love Julia Cameron, right? And I have had that book for so long, and I've gone in and out many times in my life of doing the artist pages, the writings for 20 minutes a day. Sometimes I think about it for so many days and I'm like, I do not want to do, I'm having a whole conversation in my head about just the artist way, about the morning pages. Right. But when you're consistent, and I'm in a spot right now where I'm being really consistent, and which is effectively doing what you're saying, which is the pause. And then the pause gets you to say, okay, yeah, what does trigger me? And like what sets things off in the wrong direction, or what sets things off, like it could be in the right direction, like getting in the zone for work or getting in a super creative zone so that you can kind of recreate the scenarios that you want to. But I don't know about for you, but for me, it is a fight sometimes to just like sit with it.
No, I agree. I mean, I would like to tell you that, I am consistent every single morning or evening or some time of day of writing, but I'm not, right? Because there are those days I just do not want to write. And I think for me, it's, kind of circled around to this place where I ask myself, why am I not wanting to show up for myself?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what part of me is avoiding? What part of me doesn't want to meet myself? And, for me, that's a great way to kind of look at it. Does it make me go sit in the chair? Not always.
But I would imagine.
Right. But, you talk about consistency. And I think, again, the Storyslam has really taught me the most about consistency.
Yeah.
And letting go, And so I think that when it comes to sitting down and writing, if I can be consistent on some levels, maybe you don't want to do the morning pages. Maybe you just, pick up your phone to type it in, or pick up pen and paper and just jot how you're feeling, and maybe one thing you're grateful for or three things you're grateful for, and let that be your writing so that you can kind of check it off internally. And it doesn't have to be all these morning pages. Now, you and I both know, because we both worked that program, that when you do allow yourself to sit for a longer period of time, you often surprise yourself by what comes out.
I will not say often, I will say always.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're not supposed to reread them, but sometimes I just kind of like sneak a peek and I'm like, oh my gosh. Sometimes I feel like it's just like word vomit. I don't like the word vomit, but I guess it kind of is, where you're just like, and then, and sometimes it seems counterintuitive to me to start the day like spewing venom. But what I always notice is it's always better afterwards.
Right.
It's like you just get it out and then you move on. And I always find that after kind of getting it out, then some kind of interesting idea sort of shows up, or something. And like, I've been trying to be very good about my meditation lately and really consistent. And it's amazing. I think the devil, or whatever people believe in, sort of shows up as soon as you put a stake in the ground and say, I'm going to do this every day. It's like all these flying things come at you and are like, oh, are you sure you're not going to be able to do it? And even sometimes lately when I've been meditating, and I'm just like, I don't usually have such a hard time just sitting still. But sometimes I can't even for a second get a clear head. And then that's when I just go, okay, then guess what? You're just going to sit here for a little bit longer.
Right. But Then, and again, I think it's forcing ourselves to sit, or where, whatever it is, a chair outside, somewhere where you can just say, this is where I'm going to write, or to sit with myself for 5 minutes, creating a space where I can go sit with myself to write, to meditate or contemplate is better than just like coming to this desk right here.
Yes.
And, in terms of like when you, like you said, you're just throwing out all the crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Is that, it's good to get it out of your head.
Yeah.
Because if not, it stays in there and it lives.
Yeah.
If you had paint, you'd be throwing paint against the canvas.
Yeah.
So, oftentimes when I do that and I have things that I am writing that are challenging, or maybe I'm not that grateful for in that moment, I do try to follow up with like a short little note to myself at the end of that. I'll be like, and dear Michelle, or dear one, you got this, and this is temporary, and this is a moment. Be aware of the moments today that try to show themselves to you that are beautiful, where you can find gratitude. So I remember learning to write business letters in high school, right? It's like you start off with one thing and you close nicely, you start nicely, close nicely. And so again, that's kind of what I do when I'm doing those morning pages or brain drains or whatever you want to call them.
Well, the other thing that I was struck with when I read your book is there seemed to be several places in it where you would describe the beginning and the end, a little bit how you kind of just did right now. Like you made a reference to that. Like, you born and you die. Or you said at one point, which I totally related to, you said you were in your bed and you're going to start your day in your bed and end your day in your bed. Like, what's the point of getting out? Right. And to me, I relate so well to that because you just have sometimes those days where you just are like, I can't, I don't want to, I'm not up for it. I don't have the energy. And it really hit me that, I mean, it's kind of sad in some ways to ever be in that spot, but yet I could totally relate to being in that spot.
Right. And if I remember that entry, it was like, if you start there and you end there, why get up at all? But then we know why we get up, right? We're getting up for the moments of joy for our children or our work.
Right.
And again, I think it's about what you do with that space in between or, between what we call life, what we call death. And yet there are days where, self-care may look like staying in bed.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. I mean, sometimes it'll amaze me. Like I just came back on Saturday from Jackson Hole from being there for 4 days with my patent attorney and going over all this stuff because we're about to turn in these patent applications. And this particular patent attorney is my cousin also. And so we have very different brains. And it's such a luxury to have her for 4 days to just go over stuff and to be able to like data dump and like, oh, wait, we can't forget this part. But when I came back Saturday, you would have thought I had walked to Wyoming. I was so tired. Like my brain just could not process, take anything else in. And yesterday was a lot busier than probably I would have liked. And it was fine. Mm-hmm. But I thought, I'm looking at my calendar this week going, girl, there's got to be a day where you get back in bed and just read or something, because it's just when it's too much upon too much upon too much, it's amazing that becomes its own trigger, just the compiling of things.
Right. Well, and, if you think about it, and I don't know that this is true for you, it is for me, when I get all of those things stacked on top of each other. And it's that kind of week that you described. And what it does in me is it brings up this place of overwhelm. For me, right? For me, particularly because of my childhood, because of my personal traumas of feeling like I was there to caretake everyone, which was way too much, too young, right? Yeah. Then it has that, it has a bit of that texture. And I have to, again, this is where I have to pause and I go, I'm very capable. I am not 6. I am not 8. I'm very capable and this is temporary. Yeah. And to purposely carve out time for myself for that reset, recharge. Yeah. Is really important. A child doesn't know to do that, right? So they're in that survival mode. They get that overwhelm just stacked. Yeah. But as adults, we actually have, the ability, the capacity to take care of ourselves and to choose to take care of ourselves. Yeah. And so again, I don't know what your personal life was like, but for me, that's how I describe that.
Oh, completely. And I think for me, I remember being overwhelmed as a kid all the time for different reasons than you are. But I think for me, I have such high expectations and goals and things I want to accomplish, so I remember being 13 years old, feeling completely behind in my quote career, even though I was a freshman in high school. I was like, I should have done more. Like I should have already been, all these things. And that's something that's continued on. But what I've learned very much the hard way is that I think there's some kind of instinctual thing sometimes that just says keep pushing forward, when in reality, it's like trainers or coaches will say to the athlete, you got to train hard and then take the day or 2 days and then go back to it. Right. And that is a very hard lesson for me to do. But if I don't, it's every time all that stuff gets stacked up, and it is amazing what will just put me over the edge of like a meltdown. Like you'd think I was a 4-year-old and needed a cookie. I mean, it's just like, really? Like this, you've got to be kidding me. This is nothing. And if I had just stopped 30 minutes before and eaten some almonds and taken 5 minutes to clear my head instead of, I got to make one more call. I've got to do, but I don't have time to eat. I don't have time. Well, it's like, okay, you can only do that so long, before you kill the goose that lays the golden eggs.
Right. And two, that's one of those places where, you could ask yourself, I'm feeling this certain way. How old was I when I first started learning to feel this way?
Yeah.
And then again, whether it's dialogue with that younger part of yourself or just saying, wow, isn't that amazing how that thread gets pulled through every time?
Yeah.
I think, from the book, you're talking about pushing through. My dad, because he was in the war, was very much, yes, a push through, but a keep moving kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so I learned that from him. So when I find myself in that place, I have to remember, like, I don't have to.
Yeah, I don't have to. And not only I don't have to, but I probably shouldn't. Because when I keep moving and keep moving and keep moving, generally what happens is my brain starts to get tired. I'm not making clear decisions. I'm not coming up with new ideas. I mean, there's something that is just, I remember the guy that does, I think, the New York Times crossword puzzles or some very hard crossword puzzle that he's in charge of, this Japanese guy I read this a million years ago. And he would say when he gets totally stumped, he has to leave it and go do something completely different. He's like, but his inclination is to sit and just keep going. Oh, I'm just going to push through. I'm just going to push through. And every time I do that, my blood pressure must just go through the ceiling, because it's like I push and push and push. And I often just wonder, gosh, if I had just stopped for 10 minutes in the middle of all that, I've got to keep pushing, would I've saved 20 minutes? Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And something could have came through in that moment.
Totally.
I was writing yesterday and I had gone back to something that I had been working on, 2022. And I kind of pulled it through and I was like, oh, I want to revisit this. And I was excited to revisit it. And I started writing in it. And then all of a sudden I just started feeling like I couldn't get anywhere. And what am I doing? I was trying to force something. And I just took that moment and I was like, I'm going to close it out.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't need to be revisited. And if it does, it'll kind of unfold in me over the next few weeks or months. And maybe I revisit it again later. But just, again, that place where we let ourselves off the hook a little bit without the guilt and shame, or, taking that, oh, well, I'm not a good writer, or
right.
that wasn't a great idea, because we will take those early places in childhood and we will try our best to make them current.
And do you think there's anybody out there who doesn't really question, oh, was that fill in the blank good, that writing, that event? I mean, anybody, I should say, that's worth their salt. Because I guess if you're just ignorant and you have like no standards and, you probably don't even notice. But do we all do that, or no? Or just some of us curse?
I'll be honest with you. I have no idea, right? To me, it sounds like a human condition.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're all programmed in this way. Mm-hmm. It's part of being human. I imagine, and I can say this for myself, is that I don't do it as much as I did.
Yeah,
right.
Correct.
Because those pauses, those awarenesses actually get to build up as well. They get to stack. Yeah. And then you find that you're not reacting from the old fields the way you used to. Yeah. And instead you're responding to where you are now. You're responding to your future and your present in that way. I can tell you there are weeks I'm great at that and there are weeks I suck at that.
Yeah.
So
I feel like sometimes it's like a Richter scale. It's like day I feel like I've got a 7 earthquake, and the next day I'm earthquake free for 5 days. Then all of a sudden it's like bam, bam, bam. And then aftershocks. I mean, it's crazy. One thing I'm curious, such a big trend these days is all these journeys and ayahuasca. And I'm sure that's very much because I'm in California, but talking about healing the past, I know some people who have gone on these journeys and just absolutely swear by it. I know people have gone on multiple ones and are like, oh my gosh, it just peels back all this stuff. To me, it totally freaks me out. But what's your take on that? if anything?
So I think that those journeys can be really beneficial to many people. And, where I think that they get in the way is when individuals are seeking the medicine over and over and over again, and not, like they would seek modalities or therapists or any kind of processes, go to the psychic, go to the astrologer. Not that those things can't benefit you.
Mm-hmm.
However, but if it's, you're seeking the medicine for the, I don't know, getting into that space over and over again, and you don't give it time to integrate, you don't give it time to unfold, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. But I know plenty of people who have had journeys and, just say one a year that get profound information from them. I'm completely for them.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my good friends is someone who is licensed for, ketamine and psilocybin. And so, this is a conversation that's always at my kitchen table when she is here.
That's cool. I mean, as you say, some of the people that are so for it are in your field and some of the smartest people I know. And I'm always just like, oh my God. Like, I feel like I would get stuck there on planet wherever I would be, or something would be too scary to hear. I don't know. I can't imagine what it would be, but you know what I mean? But
yeah. And I don't think they're for everyone.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and again, just checking that place within yourself that says, is this for me, or do I want to try this? Because I really can't, speak to who it's good for and who it's not. Right.
Right. Now, one thing that struck me, you're talking about string theory and how, to me, it's like threads and how they all connect. And I have played the piano ages ago, and it reminds me of the piano, right? With the strings and how everything is connected. And then I happen to be reading the geekiest book on the planet at the moment about mushrooms and the history of mushrooms. And it is like 260 pages. And I'm like, I cannot believe I am so enthralled with this book that is literally just on classifying and finding mushrooms. But anyway, so it's all about the mycelium of the mushrooms and how then they attach to certain trees, which is so funny because I'd watched this documentary of something about how, I forget, trees, amazing trees or something, and how their roots and then all their little, whatever they are, filter out into the forest, and then everything is kind of touching each other and it's all sort of connected. Was that part of your thing when you were thinking of string theory, or was it more limited to just kind of one image of the string theory?
No, I think, if you think about string theory, it kind of holds that the universe is made up of these tiny strings, right? And they vibrate and they create these moments or these quirks. And that's what happens in the life of a family. We have these things happen that change the language of our family, an early death, a war, famine, and it changes the way then that the family moves. And it, it's impactful. And I think sometimes we don't give thought to what is happening in the backfields of our lineages that have caused us to be where we are today. I don't know that I actually, thought about string theory in that way. In fact, it was my editor that came up with that title after it was written. But, just going back to what you were talking about, the mushrooms and how everything is interconnected. I mean, we'd like to think we're putting space between us and a parent, or us and a brother or a sister. But the thing is that we are all connected, whether it's just in our family or going back to that big transpersonal view we were talking about at the beginning, is we are all connected.
Yeah.
And, to think that we're not sometimes, I think, is doing ourselves a disservice.
Right. And what would you want people to get out of your book? Why should they buy it? Why do you think, I was fascinated by it. From your perspective, the person who wrote it, you must have some parts that you're like, gosh, if people only got XYZ, what would it be?
I think that it might be, if anyone has ever felt the weight of their past and not thought that they could find a way out, like, dreaming of a future or not thinking that they have a future,
Mm-hmm.
but to see that, it's these tiny moments and these tiny steps that actually add up to a lot of steps that create new pathways to where our lens widens so that, we have more resources to work with in our life than what we think are limited past.
Yeah.
I think it would be something along those lines. And also, for me as a coach, as a facilitator, a mentor, I don't really have an agenda with my clients.
Yeah.
And I think that this book is a way for my voice to be out there. And I love to be in conversation with people.
Mm-hmm.
And, I kind of told myself when I published it that, the people who are supposed to read it will read it. And the message it has in it for, whoever reads it, it'll make it to them. So I don't know, it's just, I know for me, it's been, that place where I have been able to kind of reclaim myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's an ongoing process, reclaiming myself and, integrating myself. And I don't know. And I think the way it's written is a really nice way, especially for people who are not big readers. It's easily read. I mean,
very easily read. I mean, it's surprisingly easily read because, and I'm looking at it right now next to me. And when you look at it, you're like, okay, this is going to be, but then you kind of get into it and you're like, ooh, this is great because it's like these snippets or snapshots that just take you to that space where, and then you go, oh, poor her, or wow, I feel the same way. Like I found myself having this like reaction to like every vignette, kind of like sort of positioning myself in the whole mix of it. And it was really cool. Well, where can people find you? Where can they find the book? How can, let's say people want to be part of one of your Grand Slam, Storyslam, how can they do it? Like what's the best way? What are the next steps?
So the best way to find me is michellebias.com. My private practice is remote and I can do this constellation work remotely. You can also check out my events and programs on my website. And I think the next program coming up is journaling space just once a week, 4 weeks. And that's on my website. If you want to come to a group workshop in person, you have to come to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if that meant I could see Sylvester Stallone, I'd be there tomorrow, by the way.
So if you're in Tulsa or you're local to this area, you can come to my group constellation workshops that way. And it's the same way with the Storyslam. You have to come in person to a monthly, and you don't have to be from here. You don't have to live in Oklahoma to win a Storyslam.
It could be on a layover.
Yeah, that's true.
Anywhere.
I'll put your name in the hat.
I love it. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for being on, and thank you for sharing all of your wisdom. And I hope that our listeners got excited and want to go out and buy your book.
Yes, that would be great. It's on Amazon. You can also find me on Substack, and even my paid memberships on there. I get on and give people prompts, and we talk about writing, and we talk about constellation and trauma and all the goodness of life, all the joys and the lovelies. So I hope you'll join me there as well.
I love it. Well, you guys, thank you for listening to another episode of Every Day's a Train Wreck. And I am your conductress, Marley Major, signing off. And if you haven't already, please follow the show. Please give us 5 stars if you're so inclined. And definitely please leave a comment and let us know what is your favorite episode. So thank you so much, and we will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.